Dear participants, distinguished panelists, first of all, thank you very much for joining us in this session on small in size, big in numbers, aquatic small-scale food producers and the contribution to the SDGs of the UN Food System Pre-Summit today. And please note that this session is being recorded. My name is Audun. I'm a Deputy Director in the FAO Fisheries and Aquaculture Division, and I will moderate the session today. As you know, the UN General Assembly has declared 2022 to be the International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture, or IYAFA for short. And this, for us today, is an opportunity to further draw attention to and support the crucial food production systems in line with the globally agreed Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And let me take the opportunity to share the answer to the poll that you replied to. What percentage of people in capture fisheries operates in the small-scale sector? And in fact, the right answer is more than 90%. Now, this poll concerns only capture fisheries, and unfortunately, we don't have enough data on aquaculture or the share of aquaculture staff or participants in the small-scale sector. But we hope that one of the concrete outcomes on IYAFA 2022 will be better and more precise data on the situation in the aquaculture sector. So the session today has been organized by FAO and WorldFish, together with some of the members of the International Steering Committee behind IYAFA, and that we will celebrate next year, of course. For example, Spain, USA, Global Aquaculture Alliance, the INFISH Network, and also the Too Big to Ignore Research Network on Small-Scale Fisheries, and also the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanisms. Today, we will hear a bit more about the Global Action Plan for the international year. We will then hear different perspectives from participants, from the panelists about current challenges, but also about some inspiring examples of how things work and how aquatic small-scale food producers contribute to the SDGs. And we hope that this will allow to the recognition and account for the diversity of small-scale aquatic food production systems and the incredible value they provide in supporting sustainable livelihoods, how they nourish the planet and contribute to sustainable development in the context of the UN Food System Summit and beyond. So we would like to do something similar, as I mentioned, for aquaculture, but I now want to invite our keynote speaker, Dr. Maren Headley, representative of the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, and she will share experience and actions from a region in which small-scale aquatic food producers play a very important role for livelihoods and sustainable development. Please, Dr. Headley, the floor and microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So as you would have heard, my name is Maren Headley, and I work with the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism Secretariat. And the CRFM is comprised of 17 member states, with our mission being to promote and facilitate the responsible utilization of the region's fisheries and other aquatic resources for the economic and social benefits of the current and future population of the region. Now, in 2019, the contribution of the fishery sector, which is predominantly small scale, to the GDP of member states ranged from 0.0 to 3.16%. The number of persons employed in direct production in the commercial capture fisheries and aquaculture subsectors, including full-time and part-time fishers, harvesters, and farmers engaged in artisanal or subsistence and commercial activities, was approximately 118,053 persons. The fishery sector also provides employment for many persons, port, marketing and distribution, and gear making, among other activities. And it is estimated that women represent at least 15% of all direct employment in the fishing sector. Marine capture and aquaculture production in this region is predominantly, as I said before, from small-scale fisheries and aquaculture. The total production in live weight, including marine capture and aquaculture, was just over 40,000 tons in 2020, and this was valued at about 476 million US dollars. And in terms of domestic exports, they were valued in 2020 at 234 million US dollars. So our work in supporting sustainable utilization of the region's fisheries and aquatic resources align with SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 10, reduced inequalities, and SDG 14, life below water. The need to attain the SDGs is demonstrated by the important contributions of the fisheries and aquaculture sector to the region, as previously highlighted. In July 2020, the WCAFC Regional IYAFA Coordination Committee, entirely led by fisher and aqua farmer representatives, and also made up of civil society and regional partners, including FAO and WCAFC, which is the Western Central Atlantic Fisheries Commission. This coordination committee was established to spearhead the development of activities to promote and celebrate IYAFA 2022 in the Caribbean. And the activities are built around the overarching theme of resilience and recovery, with gender and youth as cross-cutting themes. This is a concrete action which is supporting small-scale fisheries and small-scale aquaculture in our region by building new and strengthening existing partnerships, both among small-scale actors as well as with other partners from various sectors. In May 2021, the CRFM Ministerial Council adopted a resolution on IYAFA 2022, and this resolution calls upon the CRFM Secretariat and member states to promote the achievement of the objectives of IYAFA 2022 celebrations. As part of the WCAFC Coordination Committee, the CRFM Secretariat is also coordinating with member states regarding nominations of champions in the following categories: policymakers, chief fisheries officers, and aquaculture officers. The CRFM also recognizes the importance of supporting small-scale fisheries at the policy level, and we have developed the Caribbean Community Common Fisheries Policy, which is a binding treaty focusing on cooperation and collaboration of Caribbean people, fisherfolk, and governments in conserving, managing, and sustainably utilizing fisheries and related ecosystems. Given the critical role of the fisheries and aquaculture sectors in the region in terms of supporting livelihoods, food security and nutrition, and especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and its far-reaching socioeconomic consequences, recommendations of the UN Food Systems Summit need to include aquatic food and pay special attention to the crucial livelihood function of aquatic small-scale production systems for millions of people, as well as for food security and nutrition more widely. Thank you very much. I hand back.
Very good. Well, first of all, thank you to Maren for that contribution, and especially two issues. First of all, that you provided a lot of information and statistics, and this is important. If we don't have statistics, if we don't have data about the sector, whether it's in a country or in a region or a global basis, we will have problems in making the subsector emerge and become more visible. That is the first point. And the second point is, thank you very much also for organizing your committee on a regional basis. This is fundamental because in celebrating IYAFA, regional and national participation is fundamental. We in FAO and the steering committee, we can help, we can support, but in fact the activities will have to be carried out at the local and field level. So we will now show you a very brief video on small-scale fisheries. Video, please. Okay, thanks for showing the video, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. It's incredible how a few pictures and a few video slides can convey a message in such a very powerful way that maybe words cannot do. Now, my colleague Ana Meneses will give a very brief introduction to the International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture. So the Global Action Plan that has been developed and which has been adopted by the International Steering Committee. And this will set the scene then for the following statements from the other speakers. So Anna, please.
Thank you, Audun, and thank you, everybody. Allow me to recall the objectives of the IYAFA for the year of 2022. And there are two objectives. The first one, to enhance the global awareness, understanding, and actions to support the contribution and sustainable development of small artisanal fisheries and aquaculture to food security and nutrition, poverty eradication, and use of natural resources. And the second one, to promote dialogue and collaboration among small-scale fishers, artisanal fishers, fish farmers, fish workers, government, and other partners to further strengthen their capacity, enhance fishers and aquaculture sustainability, social development, and well-being. Let me say that IYAFA 22 will be one opportunity to showcase the potential and diversity of small-scale artisanal fisheries and aquaculture. And it is also one opportunity for us to better understand the benefits derived from healthy partnerships and cooperation with fishers, with fish farmers, and all parts involved. Having said that, allow me now to briefly introduce the major components of the IYAFA Global Action Plan. The purpose of the IYAFA Global Action Plan is to build the global momentum to accelerate the support required to bring small-scale artisanal fisheries and aquaculture to the forefront of societal attention and trigger related actions at all levels, securing a sustainable future for those important sectors. It is an inspirational document intended for champions of small-scale artisanal fisheries and aquaculture. It is an inspirational document for all of us who are here, because I know we are all champions of these sectors. The GAP, or the IYAFA Global Action Plan, has 4 overall outcomes that fall in 4 categories: raised awareness, strengthened science policy interface, empowered stakeholders, and strong partnerships. To secure the realization of those outcomes, the IYAFA Global Action Plan is structured around 7 interconnected pillars, which should be treated in a balanced manner. What we are seeing in this slide does not necessarily represent any order of priority. The environmental sustainability, the economic sustainability, the social sustainability, governance, gender equality, food security and nutrition, or the resilience pillar, they are all important and should be worked as such by each one of us. As in any plan, each output has an indicative list of activities. And those indicative, I say indicative because they are supposed to stimulate stakeholders to develop activities around each theme. Activities with the input of everyone, and everyone here is encouraged as such. The plan, the activities, the working plan will be tailored to your own reality, to your country, to your region. Synergies with ongoing UN decades will be made by each one of us. And such synergies with UN decades will be on the UN decade of family farming, the UN decade of action and nutrition, the UN decade of ocean science for sustainable development. We will also take international instruments to our benefit and seek opportunities for the implementation. For instance, for the Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, the voluntary guidelines for securing sustainable small-scale fisheries, the responsible governance of tenure, and many others. The IYAFA 22 intends targeting the 35th session of the Committee on Fisheries, known as COFFEE, the 49th session of the Committee on Food Security, the 13th Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization, the SDGs, the regional initiatives. We can mention and look for all those key political processes. So, in what can we do, can be involved, and what can you do? You are critical to make this year a success, and we encourage you not only to reach out to the FAO and the IYAFA International Steering Committee, but also to host and organize events of your own. Example of such events can be accessed through the IYAFA 22 event page on the website. All FAO member countries interested in celebrating and acting for this year should move ahead and host and organize events of your own. I should underline that at the FAO quotas, regional, sub-regional, and country representations, we will always be available to you to discuss and share advice. I will end by saying, let us celebrate the IYAFA 22. And allow me to finish by recalling that the Global Action Plan is meant to motivate and call actions from all champions of small-scale aquaculture, small-scale fisheries, artisanal fisheries. And once again, I know you are champions, and that's why we are in this event. Thank you, Audun. I pass back the floor to you.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you also for showing us the action plan and the many pillars. And these pillars will now be illustrated by our panelists. First panelist is Edith Gondwe, who's a PhD student at Michigan State University in the US, and she will speak on the pillar number 1 in the UNFSS Global Action Plan, which is on environmental sustainability. So,
hello, morning, good evening, depending on which part of the world you're from. So my name is Edith Gondwe, and I am a PhD student at Michigan State University. This afternoon, my time, I am going to talk a little bit about the first pillar of IYAFA, which is on environmental sustainability, and then talk about the linkages that it has to SDG 14, which is life below water. Oh, sorry about that. So the SDG 14 highlights the need of conserving and sustainably using the ocean, seas, marine resources for sustainable development. And this is mostly envisaged to occur through actions such as ensuring that there is reduced pollution, illegal and unregulated fishing is controlled, and also ensuring that there is implementation of science-based management systems so that there are better economic returns for people that are involved in these aquatic systems, as well as many other actions that are included in terms of ensuring that SDG 14 is achieved. And related to this now, for the first pillar of IYAFA, which talks about environmental sustainability, is a recognition that whilst we have all of these undesirable actions happening related to aquatic resources, such as the pollution, the unregulated fishing, there are stakeholders, a very important stakeholder that is really needs to be recognized in terms of its role. And these are like the small-scale fishers and the fisher folk and the fishermen, as well as fish farmers that participate in this particular resource. So the first pillar makes a recognition that there is need for more increased recognition of the role that these actors can play in terms of making sure that there is a reduction of the undesirable effects that are being made to the aquatic resources. And one of these roles is in terms of the governance that can be sort of like be implemented together with these stakeholders. So today I'm going to talk about a little bit more about some of the issues concerning governance within small-scale fisheries, and then talk a little bit also about issues about data and in terms of monitoring the SDGs and the outcomes related to that. So using, in the case of the geographical area where I work in. So I'm from Malawi, and in Malawi, over 90% of fisheries, just as we saw in the poll, is also dominated by small-scale fisheries. And what we observe in Malawi is that overfishing is one of the things that is problematic in the sector. And because of that, we have a lot of undesirable effects, such as the biodiversity is quite affected by that. We have fish species that have reduced by like over 70% in the past 20 years. And in recognition of that, there have been measures that have been tried to be put in place, such as implementation of governance systems, such as participatory research, as well as also ensuring that these fisher folk are involved in the management of the small-scale fisheries. But that has not yielded any outcomes. It has not led to the reduction of these undesirable effects of overfishing. And one of the things is because of the important livelihood role that the small-scale fisheries plays. So one of the things that is mostly highlighted by many people across the world, and I just took that quote like from one of the papers to say, it is important that we recognize as scientists, as policymakers, that fishers are not, it's not that they are not unaware about the negative impacts of the things that they do, like in terms of like overfishing. It's not that they are unaware. They do know that it has those negative impacts, but then the livelihood function that this small-scale fishery sector plays on this community is very huge. And most times we offer solutions to say they need to enter into alternative livelihoods, but these alternative livelihoods do not exist in these areas. Most of these areas are actually located in areas that are cut off, like from main cities. They don't have good roads, they don't have developed markets. So whilst we have the conservation aspect that we are trying to encourage them to do, they also have a livelihood function. So in the process of trying to ensure that there are these undesirable effects of overfishing, pollution, especially from the perspective of small-scale fisheries, it is important that we're able to understand the livelihood function of these systems, and to make sure that they're understood in each context separately, and develop governance measures that focus and reflect these particular livelihood functions that actually occur in these particular small-scale settings. And secondly to that, and which is my last point that I wanted to make, is also just a recognition that as we try to focus on the role that small-scale fisheries are making, and as we try to see whether progress is being made in terms of like especially the SDGs, we also have to be aware about the need of data that is being used. So in this particular example that I show in the screen, there was a discrepancy between a definition of an indicator in the SDG, and this was in the United Arab Emirates, gave different outcomes of the indicator by almost 15%. So using one definition of the very same indicator, just a slight wording, showed a very different outcome and appeared as if that there was no progress that was being made. So just also to sort of like bring to attention to say there is a need to make sure that as we try to track the progress that is being made in this particular the sustainable development goals that have been set in the various global and policy tools that are being implemented to track the progress towards this, that we are also aware of the importance of good data and to make sure that there's consistency in terms of measuring these outcomes. So in short, in terms of this first pillar where we're trying to talk about environmental sustainability and really trying to bring to try to focus on how exactly can we involve these stakeholders that are downstream, that we really need to understand and to acknowledge the social part of it, the livelihood function of it, that these conservation goals might not be fully implemented if we do not really recognize the context-specific livelihood functions that occur, and also just to ensure that there is good data to monitor indeed whether these particular goals that have been set are being achieved. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Edith. And now we'll move to the second pillar, and the presenter of the second pillar, which is on economic sustainability, is Nicolás Fernandez-Munoz, who is the manager of the Organization of Artisanal Fisheries Producers in Lonja de Conil in Spain. Nicolás, please.
Hi, good afternoon. The first, I am sorry for my bad English. Thank you for the opportunity offered to our organization, which is purely artisanal in Spain, to address all of you, making of reflection on this fishery and its importance. Although we are mainly small family businesses, it is no less true that it has a large dimension, especially due to its social importance. Although it does not have the economic strength such as industrial fishing. Being the main aim of employment and wealth in our fishing communities, with great repercussion from the cultural, gastronomic, tourist point of view, etc. It is therefore fundamental for our economy of the territory, and without this small-scale artisanal fishing, everything will be different, which is why greater government attention is required around the world. Our history is marked in all parts of the planet that are on the coast by the footprint of small-scale fishing, which is what has shaped our peoples from the point of view of anthropologic heritage. Our organization of artisanal fish produces Lonja de Conil, OPP 72. We consider that it's very important that artisanal fishermen have more strength, more voice in the international framework. Although it is true that our possibilities are small, thanks to the strength and drive that Spain and the European Union itself can offer us through the production and marketing plans. We want to help strengthen this voice with the organization of an international congress of small-scale artisanal fishing, of which we have had 2 editions. In the year 2020, we could not celebrate it, and finally we have celebrated in this month of July 2021 online. Although we will meet again next year for the month of May on the occasion of the International Years of Small-Scale Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture, you hopefully in person in the province of Cali, Spain. In this year's Congress, we have analyzed environment sustainability, socioeconomic sustainability, and governance. Allow me to give you a few brief strokes of the conclusion that we have reached in this second Congress in order to help us reflect. Two slides is relation for impact and measures about environmental sustainability. And next slide. The socioeconomic sustainability, socioeconomic change the influence and the vulnerability of small-scale artisanal fisheries. Next slide. The generational change prohibits information on the future sustainability of artisanal fishing. It may not be an important issue in certain countries now, but it will be as society advances in economic development. The administrative bureaucratization to the able to carry out and manage the fishing activity constituted an obstacle that make dynamic generational change difficult. The management system of ITQ and quotas harm artisanal fishing due to the reduction of right of access to the resource and political discard. For example, bluefin tuna in the Straits of Gibraltar. Lack of representation of artisanal fishing in institutional setting. Alternative, modernization of fishing organization and their technical training for better project management. Improvement of the governance system with an extract of fishing organization. Direct participation in resource management is required. Promote meeting spaces to address common problems of different territories to offer cohesive sectoral solution. Improve the relationship and connectivity between local economic sectors. Need for a new narrative based on sustainability that contributes to the cohesion of the small-scale artisanal fishing sector. We establish economic indicators. Stabilities that the sector itself is a direct source of relevant information on the components derived from the activity cost, level of happiness, satisfaction, etc. Study and analyze the data on this sector that are official, provided by the different government agencies. Obtain that data on economic diversification, strategies in fishermen's family unit to face situation of vulnerability. The lack of generational renewal endangers the survival of our fishing. Find out how many companies in the local context provide services to small-scale artisanal fishing, nets, naval effects, manufacturers, hooks, bait, ice, riverside, carpentry, etc. Know the number of artisanal fishing vessels that then are scrapped annually in relation to industrial fishing. Now, key to generating greater social cohesion. Putting value on the products of small-scale artisanal fishing. Seek greater direct, local, and seasonal consumption. Improve, distinguish, and differentiate the product of our fishing with respect to other products of other flights. Train fishermen in relation to communication with the administration at its different institutional level. And the finish, I look forward to support and participation in the small sky fishing meeting in May 2022. We will present the Ibero-American network of small-scale artisanal fishermen. Thank you very much, and sorry for my English.
Thank you very much, Nicolás, and your English is excellent. And thank you very much for your very concrete and practical examples, and also the recommendations and the solutions you spelled out. That's very, very helpful. The next speaker is Melanie Siggs. Melanie is Director of Strategic Engagements in the Global Aquaculture Alliance, and she will talk about social sustainability, the third pillar of our action plan.
Thank you very much for introducing me there. And I would just like to say, Nicolás, your English is superb. And I thank you very much for your presentation. I want to also just very quickly thank FAO and Wild Fish for giving me this opportunity to input into this important panel at this preparation summit for the UN Food Systems Summit in the fall. It is critical that we involve aquatic small-scale food producers in this conversation. They are critical to future food systems that meet environmental, social, and economic needs, and we must make sure that they are included in the agenda, the discussions, and the outcomes at the UN Food Systems Summit. So, what I want to talk to you about is both Pillar 3 of the IYAFA Global Action Plan, and I know the link was shared earlier if you scroll up in the chat, which I really do encourage you to read. There's a lot of excellent information and concrete action points in there. So I'm going to speak to Pillar 3, which acknowledges the fundamental need to secure social inclusion and well-being of small-scale artisanal fisheries and aquaculture, and that decent working and living conditions are essential for small-scale fishers, for fish farmers and fish workers to secure livelihoods and maintain their social, physical and cultural well-being. So with that, and also SDG 10 in mind, I'm going to look at the issue of and the opportunity for social sustainability in small-scale aquatic food production systems, and I'm going to focus on small-scale aquaculture. Now, if we look at the global trends, we can see that aquaculture production is steadily increasing and its contribution to seafood consumption is also growing, and it will become more and more important in the future in terms of sources of aquatic food. And it's therefore of fundamental importance to pay attention to decent working and living conditions for small-scale aquatic food producers in order to secure those livelihoods and maintain their social, physical and cultural well-being as those sectors grow and that development takes place. Now, Audun mentioned in his opening that we didn't have sufficient data on small-scale aquaculture to be sure of the numbers such that we could ask the same polling question as we did for small-scale fisheries. And Nicolás just mentioned in the last intervention the need for data and socio-economic indicators. Data is critical. Now, according to the Aquaculture in Big Numbers study carried out by FAO and Wild Fish in 2016, and I think you're about to be given a link to that study, but if you're not, I can put it up in a moment. Employment estimates of the global aquaculture sector based on official statistics are inaccurate and likely to be underestimates. According to that study, the majority of fish farms are small-scale, integrated household operations, And in fact, value chains orientated around small-scale producers are estimated to generate more employment than those from medium and large-scale producers. So farm-level employment is found to be much higher in small-scale compared with medium and large-scale value chains. Conversely, employment at other links along small-scale value chains is much lower than those for medium and large-scale value chains. But understanding those figures, where those people are operating and those sizes is very important. Employment from domestic-orientated aquaculture value chains is estimated to be much higher than employment from export-orientated value chains. So aquaculture, particularly small-scale aquaculture, is found to generate important social and economic services in the form of direct employment in production activities, as well as slightly less, but in indirect employment along the value chain. And as aquaculture continues to grow, as it must, it is important that more comprehensive data become available to enable successful monitoring and better understanding of the sector in terms of its critical contribution to both social well-being and in turn to inform aquaculture planning and policy for that good development, for that critical development. Indicators to monitor social and economic services from aquaculture at both the national, local and household levels are increasingly essential to ensure that aquaculture's true value be recognised and then better incorporated and enabled through good policy and involvement in those food system discussions. So an important priority, particularly for developing countries, should be the inclusion of poor and small-scale stakeholders in the development of the aquaculture sector, both directly and indirectly. Understanding where those people are, their needs, their work, their challenges and practices is essential to good policy and development that enables and protects those involved in small-scale aquaculture. While the globalization of value chains and demands for certification, for example, may appear to marginalize small-scale farmers, significant social and economic benefits could be generated by a small-scale sector that can participate effectively in certified export value chains. That can be organized and enabled, but it takes a lot of organization. Further, these small-scale sector operations can benefit from the learnings and from the investment made in those globalized value chains if systems are in place to share and enable that. There is massive investment into those globalized value chains, and if systems are in place to share and enable that learning, that new technology, that data, that understanding, then small-scale farmers can benefit enormously from that. Thus, a key recommendation is that small-scale farmers should be involved in the development of certification procedures and standards, and policies should be developed to support small-scale farmers to become certified as that becomes more possible. This will help with that shared learning and with the improvements in order to be ready to be certified. And there are many levels of that certification. So one approach that has had success in a number of countries is to support and promote kind of group certification of farmers' organizations like cooperatives or clusters of farmers, and supporting the small scale to access technical knowledge and training to utilize better management practices is required in order to develop a sector that is both productive and sustainable. So policies and investment to enable these practices can help support good development, creating decent work, social well-being, nutritious food, and more. In that study I mentioned, Aquaculture Big Numbers case, there were case studies that showed that a large number of small-scale stakeholders, including the poor, are directly involved in various kinds of freshwater aquaculture. For example, subsistence farming in Zambia homestead aquaculture in Bangladesh, integrated garden pond livestock farming systems in Vietnam. Freshwater aquaculture is directly contributing to poverty alleviation by generating employment and income for the poor. So it cannot be overlooked when we looked at technology advancements, in investments, in training, in knowledge sharing, and in policies that both enable and give access to those who need it to develop that freshwater aquaculture. In Latin America, aquaculture is commonly practiced by medium and large-scale operators. However, findings from Chile and Ecuador show that a number of small producers are operating seaweed and culture. Seaweed is another area that is growing massively. In fact, I believe it's currently the fastest growing food commodity production on the planet, something like 6% growth per year.
Sorry, Melanie, we have to move on. So
of course,
get 30 seconds to finish.
Okay. So there was a number of aspects there, but what I want to just finish with, to give you a few examples of how we hope we're helping in these areas that people may be able to replicate. We're trying to consider gender balance, how employees are recruited and trained to ensure decent working conditions when building out aquaculture operations, wherever that happens, in farms, in feed mills, and in processing plants. And we're building, for example, multilingual, accessible online training assets that people can use on their phones and on their notebooks and so on. And we think that sharing those learnings and demonstrating how aquaculture, small, medium, and large scale, can interact and benefit each other is critical. So we think that aquaculture on all levels makes good sense and is critical for both the success of the SDGs and must be included, therefore, in the agendas, the discussions, and the outcomes of this upcoming UN Food Systems Summit. Thank you very much, Audun. I'm sorry for running over time.
Oh, thank you very much, Melanie. That's very good and very good to hear all these very excellent examples. And also thank you for mentioning the importance of seaweed, which, as you say, is really growing rapidly. Now we'll move to Hazel Healy now, who will talk about food security and nutrition. Hazel is the co-editor of the new Internationalist magazine. So Hazel, please.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to shift the focus now back to wild fish and salt water, and allow me to start with a very quick thought experiment. So imagine you live by the Atlantic Ocean, close enough to hear the rollers breaking. And in those waters swim small fish rich in the nutrients that your bodies and those of your children need to survive and be healthy. But neither you nor your family will get to eat them, because these fish are destined for the diets of others. They will be turned into food for farmed fish, like salmon, as well as pigs and chickens, which will nourish wealthy consumers inland or abroad. Now, this, of course, is a reality for coastal communities across the global south. It was revealed by a study led by the Kenyan-British professor Christina Hicks. It showed how valuable micronutrients were being rerouted away from countries with malnourished populations. Now, Christina's research inspired a collaboration called the Food Justice Files with the New Internationalist magazine where I work. And for the past year, we've sought to highlight the stories of the people who go unheard in our food systems, to think about who gets to eat, why, and how to fix it. Now, this took us to the small-scale fisheries of Senegal in West Africa, a nation of fishers where 1 in 6 people live from it and everybody eats it. We visited beaches and landing sites all over the country, all along the coast, where we spoke to women like this one in the slide, in Dakar. And everybody told us the same thing. There are no fish. And they were really worried about the future. And one of the reasons for this is that fish meal factories are spreading along the West African coastline. And they're competing directly with women fish workers for a fish called yaboy in Wolof, or sardinella by its scientific name. And this yaboy is being pulverized, turned into fish meal and fish oil, serving markets in Europe and China. Now, the impact is far wider than the personal tragedy that the loss of livelihood spells for these women and their families, because yaboy in Senegal are known as the fish of the poor. They're delicious, and there's a proverb that says, it's lucky they're fiddly with so many bones, as it stops rich people from bothering with them. But as well as being cheap, they're a superfood, an irreplaceable source of zinc, vitamin A, iron and calcium that are essential to children in their first 1,000 days of life. But the once abundant yaboy is now scarce. The poor can no longer afford to buy it, and this is in a country where 70% of children under 5 are anemic. And the problem extends inland. We travelled 300 kilometres away from Yoff in Dakar, where this first photo was taken, to Linguère, on the edge of the furloughed desert, where the main livelihood is pastoralism. And this is a young family that we met in a health centre. Their 2-year-old daughter, Issata, had just been measured and found to be severely malnourished. We sat down to talk to them. We learned that Issata's father was a herder with just 10 goats, and life was a struggle. And when we asked what meals they ate, her mother said rice and fish when she could get it, not meat and milk, which they sell. And we walked out and we found dried yaboy, or ketcha as it's called, on sale in the market there. And the trader told us that the price per kilo had gone up by 40% and would jump by another 40% before the end of the rainy season. And of course, Issata needs these nutrients now when her brain is growing the fastest, and so does her mother who's pregnant. But the problem extends beyond Senegal's borders. Women fish processors salt, smoke and dry and export fish directly on the back of lorries to countries without a sea. So that's Mali, Burkina Faso, places where large areas are currently experiencing crisis levels of hunger. These women are feeding Africa, and this whole unrecognized food chain is at risk of disappearing. Hunger in West Africa has jumped 50% this year. If we want to reach SDG 2, zero hunger, it's imperative that we protect these ocean users. So what to do about it? I'm going to leave you with 4 big blue sky ideas. Number 1, redirect the nutrients, secure preferential domestic access to yaboy and include the fish in school feeding programs. This has been a great success in South Asia. Invest in these women, in the transformatrices as they're known in Senegal. They're smart, they have ideas. And strengthen inter-regional trade routes that support food security in Africa. Number 2, tackle demand for fish meal and fish oil. For example, shrink the size of farmed salmon industry until a viable alternative to wild fish ingredients is found, or shift to farming non-carnivorous species. Number 3, tighten regulation. One of the game changer ideas that we have going through at the UNFSS at the moment is a food security kite mark. Make it incumbent on fish meal companies and others up the food chain to prove that they are not undermining local food security in the same way they're supposed to adhere to environmental standards like the MSC. Number 4, and this one is really thinking outside of the box, go macroeconomic. Developing nations need foreign currency. Senegal's external debt is vast, at 60% of its GDP. This is partly what drives the state to grant licenses to investors like fish meal factories in the first place. So how can we think creatively about easing the pressure? Multilateral institutions could write off debt or even give some form of interest rebate in return for policies that protect workers in small-scale fisheries. The mechanism might work in the same way that governments are paid to protect forests. Some way to incentivize inclusive growth. The full investigation into the fate of Senegalese sardines will be published this September in the New Internationalist magazine and be appearing also on the BBC World Service later in the autumn. New Internationalist is home to many more stories that can help ensure all voices are heard, and you can go to Food Justice Files on uint.org to see more of those. Thank you very much for having me at this meeting.
Well, thank you very much, Hazel, and thank you very much in particular for bringing out the importance of nutrition and the impact of of practices or investments that are not really thought through in some areas of the world, and the consequences this can have on local food supply. So thank you very much for pointing that out. We'll now have a short a recorded message for pillar number 5 on gender equality and equity by Ms. Gayathri Lokuge from Sri Lanka. This is a recorded message, please.
Despite decades of discussions around women's contribution to the fisheries sector, women still do not have identification documents to prove that they're employed in the fisheries sector. They are not part of the fisheries-related statistics or databases. They do not hold any contracts with the fisheries regulators, and they continue to be sidelined and marginalized from the fisheries-related policies and development activities that take place in most countries across the globe. However, when you do go visit the fisheries-related spaces, you do see men and women engaged in a wide variety of fisheries-related activities. However, these men and women are also not homogeneous groups, and therefore their contribution to the sector also really differs based on the other social identity categories, such as their social class, their caste, their ethnic and religious background, and also interestingly, as the picture on the right side of here shows, the indigenous, or sometimes often marginalized groups, and their contribution to the sector. In countries such as Cambodia, fisheries and fisheries-related other activities such as processing continue to play a significant role, not only in terms of providing a livelihood and fish for consumption or fish-related products for consumption. They also is an important source of nutrition. In Cambodia, for example, 75% of the protein intake is actually from fish and fish-based products in Cambodia. You can see gendered socialization processes from a very young age among girls and boys in countries, again, such as Cambodia. Young girls and boys do follow the footsteps of their fathers and their mothers in the livelihood-related aspects, as well as in the activities that happen around the home and care duties, such as cooking. And when it comes to fish processing, especially, it is seen as an extension of food preparation practices, and this also contributes to the invisibility of recognizing or lack of recognition of fish processing as an employment or a livelihood opportunity. In certain cases, fishing and fishing-related activities are seen as a safety net, especially for the older generation, and it's seen as a fallback. But we have also seen where fishing and fishing-related activities are seen as a very important part of the identity of women, and how it gives them a sense of an organic empowerment to carry on their task. So therefore, in recognition, acknowledgement, and counting and supporting of these women in the sector and other gendered groups are quite important.
Okay, I think we had some problems there. We will make it available, though, to all the participants. I apologize for that. And thank you in any case for providing that from Gayathri Lokuge. Now we'll give the floor to my colleague Nicole Franz. We will say some final word. Nicole, please.
Thank you very much, Audun, and thank you all the panelists for taking part in this session today, and also to all of you who have chosen to attend this session. I think from all the contributions we have learned about the fundamental, incredible importance of small-scale fisheries and small-scale aquaculture, both for sustainable development and in particular also for the contribution to food systems, food security and nutrition. We heard a lot about the challenges that these sectors are facing, but we also heard inspiring examples
and ideas of how to address them. And I would like to take the opportunity to invite all of you to take next year's International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture as an opportunity for all of us to initiate celebrations, to really initiate activities that you all can start. It is led and kind of championed by the FAO, but it is really an event that is an opportunity for all of us. So join forces, tell us what you want to plan, and we will help to give it visibility as much as we can. And please also support the inclusion of inland and marine small-scale fisheries and aquaculture in the discussions of the UN Food Systems Summit, so that we can make sure that the sustainability of these two important subsectors are fully acknowledged in the deliberations of that important UN Food Systems Summit that will come up in September. And with this, I want to thank you again, everybody, and I hand it back to Audun. Thank you very much.
So thank you, everyone, and goodbye, and see you soon. Thank you.